Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name is John Leider. I'm the creator of Vuetify, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Blackguard, which just released yesterday, which is our latest offering in Vuetify, bringing some of our feature parity from version 2 to the latest release of Vue. Some of the key features that I'm going to talk about today, we have a lot of components that were promoted from our Labs initiative. For anyone who doesn't know, Labs is our way of being able to put alpha components into production or into the framework so that people that want to get it tried out and maybe don't need all the functionality that isn't in there yet can give it a shot and also allow us to do some bug testing and improve on the software. We've added a couple new components with props and some new composables to this version that powers a lot of the new features and functionality. We've expanded on our CSS utilities and normalized all of our date functionality into a singleized composable that's going to power all of our date, calendar, date, time picker, etc. We've spent a lot of time and work on improving the developer experience, not only in the framework with TypeScript, but I'll also show you later we've made a lot of improvements to the documentation. This overall is meant to just provide you with more options to find the information to work on your project. So this is a list of the major new features in version 3.4. Like I mentioned before, we have the date composable. Now, if you've worked with Vuetify 2, some of these components you're probably used to, and some of them come over with just a straight port with no new features, but we have added some expansion for things like data table, and I'll talk about that. So our bottom sheet component, data iterator, these are two commonly used components for displaying information and showing data. We've got data table, which we've now split into multiple. We realized that the singleized component was trying to accomplish too many things, and it was fighting with itself depending upon how you were receiving and displaying your data. So now we're offering 3 versions, which will involve the basic data table that we had before. We have one specifically optimized for server usage, and then we have one that's specifically optimized for virtual display of multiple rows. We've brought the date picker back, and it's just the beginning. It is the foundation for what is eventually going to be the date time picker, something that has been asked for a while, and is also powering our calendar, which will be hitting labs here shortly. If you have any problems with that, you can ask Blaine. He's out back. He works on calendar. We've reintroduced Stepper, which is going to be a little bit different. If you've used it in the past, we've split it. It's going to be into 2 components. Whereas before, if you were having a vertical or horizontal stepper as the same component, we're splitting it up into multiple ones so that we can better support the kind of unique functionality that comes from both. We've brought back a skeleton loader and one-time input to just round out some of the selection for the version 3.4, and then finally infinite scroll, which is one of my favorite components, which you can actually combine with virtual scroll to create the ultimate scrolling experience. Talk a little bit about some of the individual features of it. So the date composable kind of formed out of a necessity. In version 2, we had calendar, we had date picker, we had time picker. And for the most part, a lot of their specific functionality that involved manipulating with the date was kind of self-contained and not shared. So when we got to version 3, the idea was that we wanted to be able to not only provide a single source of functionality that would power all of the components that utilize date, but we've also introduced, we follow the I/O or date I/O utils interface with our adapter, which basically means that we're able to offer a baseline functionality that works straight out of the box. But if you have additional features and functionality, or maybe something that isn't supported by the standard date system in JavaScript, you can just swap it out for Luxon, Moment, anything that's supported in the date adapters, and it'll just continue to work. So you're able to use your own utilities to control those and manage those, and it'll just work straight out of the box. So bottom sheet, this is a pretty basic component. This is something that existed in version 2, and it's just another way to be able to show information on the screen to the user that's not in a dialogue basis. It comes from the bottom of the screen. Remains relatively the same, but takes advantage of our rewritten Takes advantage of our new repositioning layout system, menu positioning system, so that it is able to take advantage of all of the teleport from Vue 3 and take advantage of all of the micro optimizations we've made for moving elements throughout the DOM. Data Iterator, this is essentially kind of the base level of what a data table does, and this is essentially for displaying non-tabular data and long lists. It's very flexible and allows you to basically build your own way of displaying data through pagination with all kinds of filtering, sorting, ordering, etc. The data tables, which is probably our biggest feat. So like I said, we just released 3.4 yesterday. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to go to tryvuetify.com or check out the documentation. Very large release. We've got some more information that'll be coming out after the conference. But one of the biggest things in this release, obviously, is the long-awaited data tables. Now, for transferring from version 2 to version 3, it's going to be relatively the same as far as upgrade paths, but if you had use cases that would benefit from using a server-based data table architecture or a virtual-based, you now have that available, and it's interchangeable to swap in and out, very easy. So Date Picker, this is our first component that we built on top of the Date Composable. It's going to be part of a suite of components that are going to come about mid next year with date input, date range picker, calendar, and basically anything that we can find to utilize this date composable to try to pump some components out to people. And it's going to make it a lot easier for us to build these components because it's using finally a shared architecture, which is going to show a lot of benefit to the rest of the pieces of the framework that utilize this. So Stepper, the first version that's coming out with Stepper is the basic horizontal stepper. We realized in version 2 that the amalgamation of horizontal and vertical was causing a lot of dev experience issues. It was very confusing how to work with. And in the similar fashion to where we have date picker and date range picker to try to separate those pieces of functionality, stepper and vertical stepper will be different. But for the initial release, we do have the basic stepper in with a lot of new features and functionality for making it easy to mess with your templates, to work with. We follow this kind of three-tiered approach towards content and components. You can either provide props, you can either provide slots, or you can provide components. So the idea is that we're going to explicitly give you every single piece that we use to build these components at a very easy-to-use abstracted level, so that if you don't like these new implementations or you would like to modify or change them, it is extremely easy to just take what we have and recreate whatever you'd like. A skeleton load, a really important component in the ecosystem, something that's heavily not, I don't see it a lot nowadays as far as communicating to the user that some information is loading. This is an issue that I see a lot, and we're happy to kind of bring back just even a basic component to display that there's information that's coming to the user and to just hopefully provide a better user experience overall. And the same thing kind of goes with one-time input. Kind of more niche components, but these are, again, trying to round out the package. This will bring, with all these components today, it's about 90% feature parity with version 2. So we're hoping by the middle of next year to have the rest of the components that were not completed over in version 2 into at least labs and potentially coming out next year, maybe the next conference. And then infinite scroll, one of my kind of favorite components. We're able to utilize some of the new web browser APIs. Since Vuetify 3 focuses only on evergreen browsers, we've dropped support for Internet Explorer. We're able to utilize, without any plugins, web features that allow us to enhance the experience of working with Vuetify. And one of those is infinite scroll, which utilizes the intersection observer API to, again, provide you with another way of displaying and showing content to the user, whether it be through data tables, data iterators, infinite scrolling, virtual scroll, etc. So in addition to the new components, we've actually went back and cleaned up some of our existing offerings, adding some new properties to kind of round out the ability to customize the various features of Vuetify. For example, things like the new slim prop which will, we have a lot of discussion about, again, too much bulkiness in material design, too much vertical space, too much horizontal space. And this is another one of those props that we're wanting to introduce currently for VButton and VList item that reduces the visual, maybe visual clutter, if you will, of sometimes that material can bring with it. Components like snack bar, we've added some new things to kind of improve its offering, like new props to keep it open whenever, like show a visual progress timer. It is upgraded to now use, again, we have the ability to do text, or excuse me, props, slots, and regular components. And then also we have a new feature coming with that. I don't have it on here, but if anyone's heard of Vuetify Sonner, S-O-N-N-E-R, it's a really cool plugin that takes Vuetify and makes our snack bars a lot better. And we've been working with the guy who developed that to try to bring a first-party offering of that. So hopefully we're going to be able to bring things like the snack bar queue, which I know has been asked for a while, as well as just a better way of displaying it, more control for the users. So one of the things that we've been trying to do around Vuetify is really improve the documentation experience. This has come in the form of new page features that give you references to the specification that we follow for the material design. It shows you how you can report issues or how you can get help with a particular component. And we've also started introducing some new features that allow you to customize your browser, your development experience in the Vuetify documentation. So we do a lot of dog fooding of our own stuff, and I'll often switch between multiple computers, and I'll go maintain my settings. And so I started out wanting to add some setting synchronization, and it kind of morphed into this thing where we're wanting to provide users with a way to not only access some cool things within the documentation, but also if you want to take part and donate, you can get things like free ads or no ads and stuff like that. And it's just another effort. We're going to try to continue to add more ways for people to discover information, customize their documentation experience. It's something that we use a lot, so we're trying to really hone down on and making that better overall for users. Now, for anyone who has a version 2 application of Vuetify that hasn't upgraded or started to upgrade yet, so Kale, one of the lead developers on the team, we have a ESLint plugin that most people don't know, despite that we blare it everywhere, that takes care of about 80% of your upgrade automatically. Most of the changes that happened in version 3 that involve first party that we did that had nothing to do with Vue can mostly are taken care of automatically with this plugin. We've run into a lot of issues where there are some Vue upgrade misconceptions. For example, like model value. That wasn't our change, that was Vue. So we're trying to do a better job of not only giving developers tools to upgrade their projects, but also to better convey information about what is what. And again, so this Open Issues Report a Bug Vue GitHub, this is what I was talking about before, some just general information that's on all component pages now, so it's it's easier to understand everything about that component. We've also added a bunch of new types. All of the components in the framework are now automatically, all of their types are automatically generated. Slots, props, events, everything, very detailed, and we have the ability to now, you can display them on the individual component pages, we have individual API pages, we have improved search functionality. And then we've also upgraded our search experience with Algolia. So this is something that is going to be receiving a lot more attention here in the future, and just trying to make it, again, easier to identify areas that you want to find in the framework, make it easier to search, multiple ways to kind of come across things. And overall, we're just trying to provide more avenues for users to consume the information that we're trying to provide. And that was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. So we want to take some questions up here. Jilson, since I'm sitting here, this is a little bit shorter than I thought it was going to be.
Is the build time better in version 3? Actually?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thanks to Vite.
All right.
So like we can't even go back on version 2. We're talking about 200 milliseconds and you're up and running. One of the biggest improvements that we're able to also see with Vite is we have a Vite plugin where if you've worked with Sass variables in version 2 with Vuetify, you know how painful it can be to modify those and wait for the changes. And we're
Yeah.
talking less than a second now for the updates.
Yeah, it's been like 10 minutes in some projects.
Yeah, so this is something we've spent a lot of work on. Kale is responsible for building that plugin, and yeah, it's unrecognizable, the speed difference in working between the two, especially with customization.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are there any plans to make a first-party Nuxt module?
Not necessarily. The reason why is because no one on the team actually uses Nuxt. Not that that's an excuse, but no one on the team uses Nuxt, and because we have such limited resources in the past, we have kind of relied on Nuxt's community to create these plugins. We also had some communication with some Nuxt developers in the past where we were able to work hand in hand with. We haven't had that yet, and we're not opposed to it. But as far as directly coming from us, there's no plans for it right now, but it is something that we are tracking, and we're hoping to work with the Nuxt team to bring something for the community.
Any timeline on when you're going to have all the Vue 2 components ported over to Vuetify 3, sorry?
So the remaining components that are not officially released are currently pending review to go into labs. They were all put on hold pending the 3.4 release because things were getting kind of tight. I anticipate by no later than January will the remaining components be available in labs, and with the intent of by summer of next year having them complete. Probably the biggest two in terms of complexity are calendar and tree view. And calendar's waiting for review. Tree view has all of its internal architecture is built off of what we call the nested composable. And lists actually already use this. So lists, if you work with lists in version 3, you now have the ability to pass an items array to it, similar to like you did in version for tree view. And the functionality that drives that is exactly the same functionality that drives tree view. The only difference is that tree view has some additional display stuff that comes with it for being able to select, highlight, and pick different various options. But with that being said, those are all already pretty far in development, and they will be hitting labs very soon for testing, and then we'll be looking for lots of feedback.
Hey, John.
Hey, how you doing?
Thanks for all your efforts with Vuetify. So reaching parity with Vue 2 with your components is going to be a pretty big milestone, which is fantastic. I'm curious, what do you have planned, if you can give a hint to us after that? What is the next major milestone that you guys are looking for?
Well, the next release is going to be 3.5 Polaris, and while there hasn't been any official information on the roadmap, we're kind of going to be treating it as a maintenance cycle for 3.4 and to get the rest of the components in labs. Q1 next year and Q2, there's going to be a lot of focus on components, but there's also going to be a lot of focus on developer experience. We're going to be bringing some very short informational videos to the documentation. We're going to continue to expand on things like, for example, if you check some of the component pages right now, most of them, buttons, chips, cards, they're completely different than what you've seen in version 2. So as opposed to just dumping you on a page with a bunch of examples and some information, we're trying to organize things a little bit better, put them into guides, adding visual imagery to explain some of the concepts that we're talking about and to give, again, the user another way to consume the information. So next year, at least for my focus, is going to be improving that experience. We've got Blaine and Andrew and Kale and Albert and the team working on some of the new features and functionality, and we will make some announcements regarding that probably next month. But in terms of something I can talk about now is we're going to be having a lot of documentation improvements. We're going to be adding, once we hit feature parity, we'll feel comfortable with the releasing. We have a bunch of components in waiting to come out. So we have a lot of things from a V-video component to split button, number input, all kinds of things down the pipeline. And that's really kind of what this feature parity is going to unlock for us, is the ability to now, we have been bringing in new features with each release, and we have been adding new functionality to existing components, but it's been a while that we've really started to introduce a new, very full feature components besides like infinite scroll, which is the latest one. So I'd say next year is probably going to be the golden year for Vuetify, if I were to say, because we have a foundation that we're super comfortable with. The way that everything is set up with the new documentation and the architecture for the framework, we've received a lot of support. It's been a lot easier for people to contribute to the framework, which alleviates a lot of pressure on us because we can get more help. If anyone's looked at the version 2 of Vuetify with render functions, it's kind of it can be kind of a nightmare if you're not used to coding in that fashion. So us moving to JSX and us moving our documentation to Markdown based has improved the ability for people to contribute. So hopefully with all of that, we'll be able to continue to pump out some more components for next year and some more features. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Awesome. And that was it for questions. So thank you very much for that.
All right.
Thank you so much, John.
Please give it up for John from Vuetify.